Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Jason Swank, a digital marketing agency expert who helps agency owners scale their businesses from 0 to 8 figures, and Jamie Trull, a fractional CFO turned digital course creator who shifted her entire business model to seek a more balanced work life. If either of those sound interesting, make sure you go and check out our backlog of episodes. This episode today is sponsored by my company, Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit maximizing solutions to small business owners. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO Group and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com. Or you can just email me directly at hannah@claracfo.com. So today's episode is a solo episode. This is going to be my first solo episode on the podcast, and I'm actually really excited for this one because it's a concept that comes up a lot and question that I get very often. And really, this is all around today's topic is really around different accounting roles in your business and when you should hire one versus the other. And just kind of understanding all of this terminology, because sometimes we hear the term accountant, CPA, CFO, bookkeeper. What are all these people supposed to be doing? And how do you hire the right person for your needs at the right time? And do you have the right people in place to help your business grow? So if that sounds interesting, we are going to dive into that in just a second. And just a quick reminder, if you like this kind of solo content as we go through and I'm explaining these concepts, make sure that you are subscribed to our other YouTube channel, the Clara CFO Group YouTube channel. If you're watching us here on YouTube on the Financial Clarity podcast, that's awesome. We actually have a thriving community and a number of subscribers over on our Clara CFO Group channel. I think as of right now, it's about at 62,000 subscribers that we have over there. And we have over 200 videos explaining lots of financial concepts. So this podcast today is going to be a little bit more like the content that we might be covering on our YouTube channel. But I think it's really important for the purposes of this podcast to also make sure that podcast listeners are getting this information as well. So if you like this kind of content, make sure that you are also checking out the YouTube channel. Okay. So accounting roles. Accounting roles are, like I said before, can be a little bit confusing, but we're going to break them down today. This episode is really all about helping you identify what you need in your business. The first thing I want to make sure to explain to you is that there are different accountants, different types of accountants. We have financial accountants and we have tax accountants, and there's multiple different roles underneath each one of those. So I'm going to go through one and then I'll go through the other. Sometimes you'll have unicorn people who can really do both. So they can do the financial accounting and they can do tax accounting. And you'll have many, many firms that have the ability to have, all of your services being taken care of at one place. But that's typically not going to be one individual who will do all of that for you. It will typically be, they have a tax group and then they have a financial accounting or a bookkeeping group, or maybe tax planning, et cetera, et cetera. So when you work with a larger firm, you're going to have more individuals that can help provide a full suite of services for you. But it's important to note that just because someone is covering the financial side of your accounting doesn't necessarily mean that they're covering the tax side and vice versa. So that's why we want to make sure that all of your roles are being considered and you know what you need because this is very important. Okay, so who would be considered a financial accountant? So financial accountants would be anyone that goes into the preparation or the accuracy of your financial statements. So if anyone that's touching the quote unquote books, the books are all of your financial transactions in your business. So anytime you charge a credit card, that creates a transaction line item that goes into your quote unquote books, your accounting register, your accounting records. And that needs to be kept organized and put into the right place so that you can have reports that come out in the way of financial statements, like your profit and loss and your balance sheet. So that's keeping your books in order and having, and all the way through to the preparation of your financial statements would be considered financial accounting. Okay. And you need all of that stuff to be kept organized and hopefully in an accounting system. And that needs to be managed by someone who knows what they're doing. Hopefully you need to have somebody who knows what they're doing in an accounting system. So let's talk about the different roles that you might hire to handle the financial accounting side of your business. The first person that you might hire when you're growing your business is going to be a bookkeeper. And this bookkeeper is going to be the person that is literally keeping the books. Like they are going to be keeping track of those transactions that we talked about, and they're going to be putting them into the right category. When they come into the accounting system, they're going to see a line that, let's say, is, $20 to Slack, for example. And they're going to code that to software. They're going to put it in the right category or code it to the accounting code so that it shows up in the proper account. When you pull your financial statements, you will be able to see that, yes, that transaction went into a software expense. Think of the bookkeeper as your digital organizer of all of your transactions. So you want the bookkeeper to be very detail oriented. You want this person to be the one asking you for a receipt for the $5.25 that you charged to Burgermeister on September 10th, 2023. Like they are going to be asking you down to the penny if they don't know what something is. And that trait of being very detailed is something that you actually should look for in a bookkeeper. You don't want the person who looks at stuff just at a 30,000 foot level to be your bookkeeper. Okay. That's going to not go over well for you. So the bookkeeper is going to be in charge of keeping all those books. And then they're also going to be in charge of reconciling the bank accounts and the credit cards. So you want them to be very nitty gritty. If you're going to do a reconciliation, you need to make sure that every little penny is accounted for. So bookkeepers, detail oriented. And this is typically going to be the very first accounting role that you probably hire, outside of maybe somebody to prepare your taxes. If most people maybe hire that first, and then bookkeepers will probably be second. But this will be the first financial accounting person that you're going to hire. Sometimes bookkeepers will take on other things, like they will maybe run payroll for you. They might pay bills, or maybe you can get their help with collecting on invoices, or maybe even preparing invoices. So it's not necessarily a typical role of a bookkeeper to do all those additional tasks. Really, the core role of the bookkeeper is just, coding the transactions and reconciling those bank statements and credit cards, and then basically getting to a place where you can pull a financial statement. But a lot of bookkeepers will be able to help you out with some other things. So if you need help with other things, you can just always ask a bookkeeper that you're looking into, hey, can you also run payroll for me? Or, hey, can you also pay bills? And typically most of them will be able to have some kind of add-on service for that. But this is a little bit getting into the next category, the next type of position you might hire. And that is a full charge bookkeeper. A full charge bookkeeper is kind of like the next step up. So it does everything that the bookkeeper does and then some. So they're going to touch every aspect of the business finances. They're going to touch the bills. They're going to touch the invoices. They're going to run payroll. They're going to start filing taxes for you. So this might be your state and local taxes. If you have sales tax returns you need to file, they might be doing that for you. They might even help with some of the preparation of some of the federal tax return items as well. They might not be actually doing your, annual tax return, federal annual tax return, but they might be able to pull together information for your tax accountant and be able to give that over, or they might be doing some, payroll tax reports, things like that. They will have more responsibilities than typical bookkeeper. And I often see a full charge bookkeeper not being something that is outsourced, but this is usually an in-house position. That's what I would see. And this is probably going to be more of like a full-time role for somebody. So that's another reason why we probably see that more in-house rather than having that outsourced as well. Now, the next term, this one is the one that confuses everybody. It is accountant. So very, very general term is accountant, and everybody will have maybe a slightly different person that they're going to think about when they think of their accountant. So it's a very general term. However, a true accountant would be somebody that's in charge of the accounting or a particular part of accounting for a certain department in a company, or a certain department or a certain section of, let's say, the balance sheet or the profit and loss statement. So you can have a financial accountant, meaning that they're in charge of the financials, similar to a bookkeeper or a full charge bookkeeper. You can also have a fixed asset accountant or a revenue accountant. You can even have a project accountant. So you can have accountants that are kind of in charge of different sections of the business. So all types of accountants, there can be all kinds, but a lot of times you'll hear this term thrown out, and I hear it a lot when people say, "Oh yeah, my accountant is doing my taxes," and because they might have a CPA doing their taxes and they're going to call them the accountant. So I think this is the most kind of confusing term of all of these terms that we're going to talk about today, is like, who really is the accountant? So I actually don't see people hiring for this like accountant, quote unquote, position all that often, unless you get into a larger finance department where you might start having accountants over these very specific things, like the fixed asset accountant or the inventory accounting, things like that. So, you know, here I would say for most small businesses, we're not going to just hire like a general accountant. If you do, they're going to be kind of a glorified full charge bookkeeper. And they might have, if you are doing full accrual accounting, an accountant would typically be someone who has some accounting education as well. So that's something to look at their resume, make sure that if they're claiming that they're an accountant or they're looking for an accounting position, that they actually have some education in accounting. And if they do, they might be able to help you if you're more on an accrual based um, financial. If you're reporting on an basis, then you might want to have more of an accountant rather a bookkeeper. Most bookkeepers are going to be really familiar with cash basis accounting and maybe not necessarily accrual based. So, a question to ask if you're looking, if let's say you do have accrual based financials, you might need to hire an accountant rather than a bookkeeper. Um, but again, you need to think about what do you actually need, and if an accountant is the right role or if it's not. So as we kind of go up the ladder of these positions, we're kind of going up in seniority. And so the next position that I want to talk to you guys about is a controller. So a controller is a role that really oversees all of the financial function in a business. So it could be overseeing, a controller could be overseeing a bookkeeper, it could be overseeing different accountants. It could be overseeing like also something like an AP or an AR clerk. Sometimes you have somebody who just really focusing on paying bills in the organization. They might be considered more of an accounting clerk rather than an actual like accountant role or a bookkeeper role. So a controller is going to oversee all of the financial accounting functions in the business. And you typically don't have a controller unless you have multiple positions in your accounting department. But sometimes in a smaller organization, you are going to see the term controller used because maybe it's a little bit more of a higher level finance person, somebody who has more experience, is coming into a smaller business and they're doing everything. So they might be doing the role of the bookkeeper, or a full charge bookkeeper, and they don't have people working underneath them, but they also have more financial acumen and they, maybe have the financial education that it doesn't make sense to give them a bookkeeper title, and really a controller title might make more sense because everything from like soup to nuts on the financial accounting side rolls up to them, and they are in charge of the accuracy and the quality of the financials. They're going to be also the one who is going to be looking at the financial processes and making sure that those are efficient and improve them if they need to be improved. And really, that controller is going to be looking at the historicals for most of their work. They're going to be looking at what happened in the past. Are the financials from the past accurate? And they're going to be working on the processes to make sure that, going forward, they will also stay accurate. But really, like the controller is looking at past historical financials. And maybe they'll be involved potentially in like a budgeting process or something, and maybe a little bit more like start to think a little bit strategically, but they're not going to be the advisor. Just controllers are typically going to be able to pull reports, give you some answers if you have questions, but they're not going to necessarily be the role that's going to, strategically think with you going forward. Now, again, there's always going to be those unicorn people that can do that work, and they might have a title of a controller, but typically you don't want to expect your controller to have a strategic focus. Okay. So that gets us into our next level, and that is the role of the CFO. So the CFOs are going to be the top level of financial leadership in the company, and they're actually going to oversee both the um, financial accounting side and the tax accounting side. And I'm putting them in this financial stack because they spend most of their time looking at the financials and projecting financials and helping the leaders, the CEO, and other leaders in the company make decisions based on the financial information. They will be doing things like forecasting and budgeting and analysis and pricing analysis. They will be helping with future decision making. They should be helping with cash flow forecasting and things like that as well. So they do look to everything that's happened in the past and the historical financials to help them make decisions for the future, but they're going to be spending most of their time really overseeing the team and looking into the future of what's happening in the business and how do we make the best next steps. So they are going to be the strategic thinkers. This is going to be that finance hat in your business that is also there to think strategically with the other leadership. Okay. In a smaller organization that doesn't have a controller, the CFO might also step into the controller role as well. And the CFOs are also going to oversee that tax compliance piece and tax planning. So they can be involved in those conversations as well. So, and then this is one where, at Clara CFO, we provide this strategic financial leadership. But we offer it on a fractional CFO basis. So this, for organizations that don't need a full-time CFO, because really we don't see many organizations needing a full-time CFO until you get into like $30 to $50 million of annual revenue, or you're going through maybe you're going out and getting VC funding, or you're doing some type of big mergers and acquisitions, things like that. You might need somebody that is more full-time in the finance role. But most small businesses, if they're not doing anything really, really big, they are probably needing fractional CFO work. So sometimes, even in our organization, we'll work with companies that don't have a controller, so we can provide the CFO role and the controller role and still oversee their accounting team. And so you can kind of just look to see, okay, what roles are not currently being filled, and you can decide what level the CFO needs to be at that place if you're going to leverage a fractional CFO. So that's all of the financial accounting positions that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Of course, there are going to be more like nuanced ones. And then if you go and you look at something like Amazon's open accounting jobs, you're going to see all sorts of different types of accountants and, directors of finance and directors of accounting, directors of lots of different things. So you're going to see lots of different levels of accounting positions, but that's when you're talking about huge accounting departments, lots of different titles. And, this is a small business podcast. So I'm talking to you guys about the type of roles that you're going to see and the type of roles that I see when we go in and work with different businesses. So on the other side of accounting roles is going to be your tax compliance. And tax compliance is really just meaning like filing tax returns, local, state, federal, and this can be done by a number of different people. So you might hear somebody say at some point in time, and again, we're going to kind of go through from like kind of the most least requirements to like the higher level requirements, especially when it comes to certifications and education. So we're going to start with tax preparer. You may hear somebody say, oh yes, I'm a tax preparer. And that's like really not necessarily a regulated term. A tax preparer could be somebody with a CPA or an EA, but if they have those certifications, they're probably going to tell you that's what they are. They're not going to call themselves a tax preparer. So this would be anybody who's in charge of preparing tax returns in one way or another. Full charge bookkeepers can do this sometimes, and then some people just their full-time role is tax preparer. There aren't any like IRS or federally identified certifications for tax preparer. So there are courses people can take, and some states have some certifications for tax preparers, but this is not standardized. So there's kind of no sort of like gold standard, and there's no licensing of a tax preparer. So keep that in mind. If you're going to somebody for the first time to get your taxes done, you might need to decide if that's okay. Maybe if you have a very simple tax return, like you're just filing a regular 1040, you have, one job with W-2 wages and, a very, very simple business, Schedule C business, you might be able to just take this to a tax preparer and it would be really, should be quite easy for someone to do with, not a lot of expertise. But if you do have a more complicated situation, you probably don't want to take that to a tax preparer that doesn't have some of these education requirements and certifications. So the next level up from that would be an EA, which stands for enrolled agent. So this is an IRS certified program, and these EAs are allowed to do tax returns and other tax communication, and they can represent you in front of the IRS. So they are required to do ongoing education as well, and they're required to pass a rigorous test. So this is definitely a higher level of certification and ongoing commitment to keeping up with the accounting standards, tax accounting standards. So definitely, I've used an EA to file my taxes for my business, and a lot of EAs are very, very, very in touch with what's happening with the IRS, and they're staying on top of it. So an EA might be a really great option to go to if you're looking to get a tax professional, and maybe saving a little bit of money over going straight to a CPA. And then a CPA, so that stands for Certified Public Accountant, and these are state board certified, but they have to pass a uniform federal CPA exam. And so the CPA exam is very, very extensive. I have done it myself. And you also need to have a certain amount of college education and a certain amount of work requirement before you can even sit for your CPA exam. So there's definitely a lot of hoops to jump through in order to be able to even sit and take this test. And then the test is very complicated. It's somewhat like, for lawyers passing the bar, the CPA exam is very similar to that for accountants. And, CPAs can prepare taxes, they can help with tax planning, they can do the tax resolution and represent you in front of the IRS like the EAs can. But it's important to note that just because somebody is a CPA doesn't mean that they are good at taxes. People get CPA licenses for lots of different reasons. I am a CPA and I do not do even my own taxes. I took a different route after my education and after getting my CPA license. I went into the financial accounting side of the business. I was auditing companies and I went a different route. So when you go through very traditional route, you go tax CPA or you go financial accounting CPA. And I went the financial accounting CPA. And so that's why I'm here today talking to you guys about this financial accounting stuff. So I took a different route. So just make sure that just because somebody has the certification of a CPA doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be the ones that will be doing a tax return for you. So big thing on tax compliance is like, just make sure you know what you're getting into when you hire any of these people, tax preparer, enrolled agent, or CPA. Make sure you really understand an engagement letter. You should be getting some type of engagement letter from any of these organizations or any of these individuals or organizations that will tell you exactly what you have signed up for. And, which returns that they're going to be responsible for, and they should be giving you communication to say what they need from you and what you need to provide and where you need to provide it and all of that stuff. So, all of those things can help. All of these people can help you with tax compliance. Now, one really, really, really common mistake is that business owners will tend to assume that because they've hired a CPA or an EA to help them with tax compliance, that they're automatically going to be getting tax advice and planning along with it. And that is just false. So most accounting organizations, CPA firms, EA firms, anybody who's doing tax preparation, they're typically going to separate out a tax compliance engagement with a tax planning engagement. Every now and then you'll have somebody that says, oh, we only do compliance if we are also doing advisory work and doing some tax planning with them. It's all part of like a rolled in, all-in-one engagement. But most times I don't see that. Most times you're just paying for a tax return, and then you have to actually engage the firm separately to get any kind of like special advisory, somebody to tell you, how do I save on taxes? How can I plan for a lower tax bill next year? So I see business owners getting very frustrated oftentimes thinking that they're paying for a service, and then they never have that conversation with their CPA, and they are wondering why they continue to pay high tax rates, and they're wondering why their CPA is not saying something to them. But it's probably because you actually haven't engaged that firm to do tax planning with you. And so if you are interested in that service, first of all, you need to make sure that your firm even does that service, because a lot of CPAs and EAs don't want to do tax planning because it feels too wishy-washy, or they don't feel confident enough to give that advice, or they just don't know how to price it correctly, or whatever it is, they don't provide the service. So you need to make sure that your CPA or your tax accountant, whatever level they are they going to be a good tax planner as well? So think about that. They should be asking you lots of questions. They should be engaging with you multiple times during a year. If they're going to be a good tax planner, they should definitely be touching base with you at the end of each year. But ideally, they're touching base earlier in the year too, so that you can, if you need to be making any big strategic moves, you have the time to do it. And it's not just, a December 31st type conversation. So you definitely want to make sure that if you are paying for tax planning, that you're getting it. And then if you're not paying for it and you want it, that you can engage your firm to do that for you. So a CPA, or technically like a tax attorney, could potentially help you with some tax planning. So that's kind of a separate thing from the tax compliance. Okay. Well, those are the main accounting roles that you're going to see in a small business. So I hope that this episode has been helpful to you, and hopefully explained some things that maybe were a little bit confusing before. But if you have any other questions, or you want to dive deeper into this topic, we do have some more videos over on the Clara CFO Group YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. Also, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at hannah@claracfo.com if you have any follow-up questions from this episode. I'd be happy to answer them for you and help continue to explain this topic. And I am sorry, I apologize for my entire profession that we've made this difficult for people to figure out, but I'm here to hopefully clarify. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode, and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.